lads, and welcome back to the Brockopp side. And would you look at that, it's been almost a week since my early review for Spider-Man Far From Home came out, and now that we're on the day where the movie actually comes out, we can actually talk about the spoilers now. So, I mean, of course, if you haven't seen the movie yet, go check out the movie first, then come back here, and if you want to see my non-spoiler related thoughts about the movie, go check out the video up there, and if you like this video or that one, then consider hitting that subscribe button. But anyway, spoilers. Let's get into it. And just to kick things off, we're going to start with a smaller spoiler, and that is Ned, Peter's best friend, actually starts dating Betty Brant, one of their fellow students. It actually happens on the plane ride to their first stop on the European trip, and it just completely came out of nowhere. There was this whole thing where they were trying to switch seats so Peter could be with MJ on the flight. That didn't really turn out so well after Peter faked some perfume injuries and the teacher took extensive action. So then Ned and Betty sit next to each other for this 9-hour flight, and then they walk off the plane. It's like, oh yeah, we're dating now, which was really funny, and I was just kind of really happy for Ned at that point because, you know, he did get dusted and then came back. So, yeah, I mean, it was just a fun little running joke throughout the entire movie, them doing, you know, fun couple stuff like, hey babe, let's go do this, oh, I love the way you say that. But then by the end of the movie, they decide to break up because they've, you know, grown as people, but they still respect each other, which was kind of fun. But anywho, now that we got one of the more light spoilers out of the way, let's talk about some of the bigger ones. And of course, the really big ones revolve around Mysterio, aka Quentin Beck, aka Jake Gyllenhaal. So, yeah, chances are if you know anything about Mysterio in the comic books, then you probably would have guessed that, well, would you look at that? Homeboy's a fraud in this movie. You know, in the trailers, they kind of made it like he was a fellow hero from another universe that's here to help Peter and was going to be a friend, and that the main villains were going to be these elemental characters like Molten Man and Hydro Man, stuff like that. But, yeah, I pretty much saw it coming that Mysterio was just full of complete crap and was just making things up and conning everybody. So, you know, up until he gets revealed, we see that, you know, he's fighting these Hydro monsters and rock monsters and stuff, and he's flying around shooting Doctor Strange-style triangle beams and stuff. And then we find out it was all just created by some high-tech Stark Industries-style drones, and Mysterio's wearing a motion capture suit throughout most of that. And then it's revealed that Mysterio's true motivations are based on the fact that he's a disgruntled ex-employee of Tony Stark. It's actually revealed that he helped invent the barf technology that, you know, Tony uses to show that, you know, hyper-realistic flashback at the beginning of Captain America Civil War, and he's all pissed off about it because it's his life's work, and then Tony just came around and called it barf. That's pretty messed up. And he's surrounded by this army of other former disgruntled, you know, Stark employees who want some revenge. And this is kind of one of my minor issues with the movie, which I touched on a little bit in my non-spoiler review, that his motivations feel kind of similar to other Spider-Man villains we've gotten before, because his motivation kind of felt like it was a bit similar to the Vulture in Spider-Man Homecoming, because, you know, he didn't work for Tony Stark per se, but his company came in and took away some high-paying gigs from him after the Battle of New York. So that just felt, Mysterio's motivations felt kind of similar in that regard, but also it kind of seems like most Spider-Man villains in live action or comic books or video games, they kind of have somebody they're trying to get revenge on, you know, like in the Spider-Man PS4 game, Doc Ock and Mr. Negative want revenge on Norman Osborn, you know, for doing some horrible things back in the past. So, you know, it does kind of annoy me a little bit, but, you know, it's still a really good character, and I really like what they did with the character here, so it's not like some movie-ruining thing for me. But then once it's revealed that Quentin Beck is a fraud, and he's been using these high-tech drones to create the elementals, and him flying around and stuff, that's where the floodgates just kind of completely open up, and then he can just use that to manipulate and mess with Spider-Man. He can even just generate complete rooms and characters to the point that Spider-Man can't even tell the real world apart, because it's like, hey, are you Mysterio's, you know, creation? Are you a real person? person? What are you? Why are you lying to me? Which this concept of who can you trust, what is real, what is not, kind of does come into play with one of the post-credit scenes, but we'll get into that later. So I kind of vaguely talked about this one scene in the movie where everything just kind of elevated significantly after that, and the scene I was talking about was this one where Spider-Man goes to confront Mysterio, or he tries to tell Nick Fury about it, but then he gets sucked into this trippy visual nightmare that Mysterio creates for him, you know, running down hallways, you know, having this echoing voice of, "You're a failure, you suck, your outfit is stupid," and it's even complete with zombie Iron Man. And what I think is a reference to the Spider-Man 2 video game. If you've played the game, there's this part where you go to fight Mysterio, and you go to this little funhouse at the bottom of an apartment, and then you're in this room full of mirrors, and a bunch of evil Spider-Man come out, and you gotta fight them. There was something very similar to that in this movie, which I thought was really cool, and it might not be a reference to the game at all, but that's how I take it, and that's how I'm gonna perceive it. But those moments are some of the best in the entire movie, and I never thought we'd actually get something like that in a movie, so that was just really cool to see. So of course, since Quentin Beck completely made up this whole Mysterio concept, of course that means he's not from another universe, which is probably going to disappoint some people, but if I'm not mistaken, the multiverse was already confirmed in Doctor Strange. I could be mistaken, but, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean there's no multiverse, so the possibility of a live-action Spider-Verse movie is very much real. So, earlier in the movie, it's revealed that Tony Stark left Peter his old glasses, you know, the ones that he used in Infinity War and Endgame, where he finds out that he now has access to Edith, which is an AI where he basically has access to all the Stark Industries resources, including a series of satellites where he accidentally uses one to set off a drone strike on a former classmate, Brad, who is trying to get with MJ as well, and also has kind of a scandalous photograph of Peter with his pants down with this, you know, German model that's giving him the SHIELD stealth suit, so of course he wants to get rid of it, but he didn't mean to, you know, send a drone strike on the bus they were on, so it's like, ho-ho! The first thing he does with these new glasses is almost kill his entire class! Oopsie. So that leads into what I was talking about in my non-spoiler review, where Peter makes a certain decision halfway through that was pretty stupid and kind of pushed the rest of the movie forward. So basically, after Spider-Man and Mysterio defeat the Molten Man, they go to a bar, have a couple drinks. You know, Peter, of course, has a lemonade because he's underage still. And basically, Peter's like, you know what, I don't think I'm gonna be the next Tony Stark, you should be. So then he takes off the Edith glasses and gives them to Quentin Beck and gives him access to everything, which I remember sitting in the theater and I was like right down the lower row, and the people next to me were like, oh, come on, Peter, why would you do that? He's clearly evil. Which, you know, like I mentioned in my non-spoiler review, it's like, yeah, he's young, he's flawed, he's gonna make stupid choices. He made quite a few of those in Homecoming, but this is kind of a big one. Which of course it was revealed that was part of Mysterio's plan all along, to get the glasses to have access to all these Stark Industries resources so we could continue to create this facade that he's this great big hero with mystical powers and stuff, which is actually kind of similar to Syndrome in The Incredibles, where, you know, he created this suit and all this cool tech and fabricated all these different dire situations where he could swoop in and save the day and basically be a pretend hero, but everyone thinks he's a real hero. So then Mysterio finds out that MJ, Ned, and Betty all know about Mysterio and him being a fraud because Peter figured it out earlier when he found a piece of one of those drones, so now they're all targets, so he's going to kill them off during this big final battle that he's of course making up on the London Bridge. So Peter then calls Happy Hogan, who comes in on a private jet with a booth in the back where Peter can make a new Spider-Man costume, that really cool red and black one, while Happy is playing Back in Black from the original Iron Man. Which then, of course, Peter had to ruin the moment by going, hey, I love Led Zeppelin. I like what Sony and Marvel are doing with the Spider-Man costumes, in that they, of course, wanted to do some bigger and bolder things, like, you know, this new suit, the Iron Spider and stuff, but they realized that the smart thing to do was to give us a more classic idea of a Spider-Man suit, and slowly progress into something new like this, which I think was really cool, and I look forward to seeing more of this suit. And also something I like about this suit as well is, in the final final battle, you know, where there's drones going around and big explosions, a real big grand action set piece we didn't see in Spider-Man Homecoming, but we actually get to see his suit actually get damaged, you know, burn marks, holes, scratches, tears, stuff like that, something we really didn't get to see with the other suit, so I really like we got to see that here. And of course, it's a climactic Spider-Man final battle, and he's got the web shooters, so of course those have to break, so he's like, oh no web shooters, I gotta improvise. So then Spider-Man gets control of Edith again, stops a drone attack, saves his friends, saves the city, but then Mysterio ends up actually dying in the process, which I was really surprised they actually killed him off, because I kind of figured they were just gonna lock him up in prison next to Vulture and Scorpion so they could start setting up the Sinister Six. But that possibility is still not completely out the window. Then back in New York, Peter takes MJ for a swing through the city, which, you know, in other Spider-Man movies it was shown as this graceful, beautiful thing, you know, swinging the pretty girl through the city and all that, but here MJ is just absolutely terrified of it, and he actually almost lets go of her one time, so it's probably a little more realistic, showing that it's probably a little bit too much of an adrenaline rush and there's no seatbelts in this, so yeah, that's probably more likely what would happen if Spider-Man were to swing you through the city like that. Okay, so those were all basically the major spoilers in the main movie itself. But now it's time to talk about the post-credit scenes, which I've been very, very excited to talk about. So the first post-credit scene picks up where the end of the movie left off, with Peter dropping MJ off, and then he looks over to this jumbotron on the side of a building where a news report is coming out about Mysterio dying, and everyone still thinks he's a hero and all that, and it turns out Mysterio actually framed Peter for killing him, you know, because Spider-Man has a bad luck of getting framed for murder, and then it's revealed that Mysterio sent out a message saying that Spider-Man killed him because he didn't like what he was doing, and then actually outed Peter Parker's identity, and now the entire world knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, which I'm sure is going to give him a lot of problems in future movies, and it's really kind of a shame because I'm pretty sure he was the only MCU character left that actually had a secret identity. So that's gonna prove to be a problem, but that's actually not the best part about that post-credit scene. So we're watching this news report, and then first, the Daily Bugle gets name-dropped, and then, after that, are you ready for this? We then see that J.K. Simmons has come back as J. Jonah Jameson in the MCU. Oh, that was probably the best part of seeing this movie for the very first time in the theaters. Here's an accurate recreation of the movements I made when he first appeared on screen. Yes! Jameson is back, baby! When J.K. Simmons showed up on screen, everybody in the theater freaked the fuck out, myself included. There's been just so much on and off talk over the years about him coming back to play Jameson, and I never really thought that was going to happen. But then it did. It just made me so happy, and it felt so good to see him, you know, a little bit more modernized. You know, he's got more of the modern idea of Jameson, where he's on like a news show on like the Daily Bugle website, you know, giving his whole Spider-Man hate speech sort of thing. But man, was it so satisfying to see him with the hair and the mustache and the suit doing the whole, he's a menace to the entire city! But anyway, I'm sorry to kind of get a little overboard there, but I'm just so excited about that. But anywho, so we have one more post-credit scene after that at the very end of the movie with Nick Fury and Maria Hill, where it turns out Nick Fury and Maria Hill were actually Skrulls the entire time. More specifically, they were Talos, Ben Mendelsohn's character from Captain Marvel, and his wife. They weren't like replacing him like for the last 20 years or anything, but it was like they were just kind of filling in for Nick Fury while he was on vacation on a Skrull ship, which I thought was actually kind of cool. I was like, for a second there I was like, okay, are you trying to set up the Skrull invasion again or something? But I think it was mostly just a gag to add the very end of the movie, like, haha, Nick Fury's still in touch with the Skrulls and all of that, which is, you know how I mentioned at the beginning, the whole, you know, trust and who is real, who is not thing. Well, it turns out Nick Fury was not real the entire time. And I just realized we've gone through this entire spoiler review and I didn't even talk about Spider-Man and Nick Fury together once, even though that's something I've wanted to see in a live-action movie for quite a while now. Oopsie. So, yeah, I think that basically covers everything spoiler related to Spider-Man Far From Home. There were probably a couple other things I might have missed out on. You know, I didn't talk too much about Happy and Aunt May's and a little lovey relationship there, but I think we did cover all the big stuff here, so if you saw my non-spoiler review, you probably understand now why there were certain things about this movie that I just really wanted to talk about. And now we have. So, that's my spoiler review for Spider-Man Far From Home. I still can't get over J.K. Simmons in this movie again. But anyway, if you guys have seen this movie or you want to put your own thoughts on these spoilers, or if you're now questioning how many other people have secretly been Skrulls throughout the entire MCU for even a little bit or a long time, let me know what's down below, and we'll see you on the Brockopp side.